Well, hello, researchers. Coming at you virtually from my home office. I've told you all, but I do have two standard poodles, so you may hear them bark occasionally in the background. I do apologize. So today, as we get started, I hope you all enjoy kind of watching this from home. My plan is to send it out to you, but I may try to get it uploaded to YouTube as well. Because then you can put me on like 1.5 speed. Because you guys know, sometimes when I get excited, I talk a lot. And this is a topic. We're going to be talking about program evaluation today that I'm really passionate about. I'm actually working on a big program evaluation right now for the counseling practice that I work at. So it's exciting to share more about. Anyways, yeah, we'll see if you can put me on time and a half to listen to this PowerPoint. But I want to get started today, actually, with Thanksgiving coming up this week. Just having a quick note about a practice I like to engage in whenever I'm presenting somewhere for counseling. I like to kind of go through the process of a land acknowledgement, and I think that's especially important kind of here this week because it's Thanksgiving, because oftentimes in white culture it's celebrated as a time when pilgrims and Indians came together to have the first feast together. But I think, as we think about Thanksgiving and likely the colonization and manifest destiny story that we were taught in school, I just want to take a minute, and I'm actually going to read an Indigenous Thanksgiving prayer just to acknowledge that that the land that we're all standing on, maybe some of us have American Indian heritage, maybe we don't, but that there were millions of Native individuals in the United States when individuals from Great Britain came to conquer in Spain and France, and individuals across this land were slaughtered, and so that we can now call it home. And so to just take a minute and, as we think about Thanksgiving this week, as we think about gratefulness and thankfulness in our own life, I just want to read an Indigenous Thanksgiving prayer. So, dear Lord, I come before you this day in the presence of Atayok Naholo, the white man, because it is this day that he calls Thanksgiving. On this day, he likes to remind himself of the Indian people that helped him survive all those years ago. Indeed, he now calls the whole month of November Native American Month. We are shown pictures of smiling pilgrims and smiling Indians as we stand in his schools and at his festivals in our feathers and buckskins and say that we too are thankful. But Lord, today as I reflect as an Indigenous man on what Thanksgiving is to us, I still, with a grateful heart, give you thanks that my people are still here. And I realize that the trials that we have faced were not sent by you, God. Though many things were done to the Native people in your name, they were the works of man and not the acts of God. Though they say you were with them, I do not believe you walked with those same pilgrim fathers as they robbed and killed the same people who helped give them their first Thanksgiving. I know you were not with the Christian Lord Jeffrey Amherst when he ordered smallpox-infected blankets sent out to all the tribes of the Ohio Territory and unleashed a pandemic that killed over 100,000 people. Neither were you with the Christian American Army as it used this same tactic on the tribes of the Upper Missouri, or with the genocide that attempted at Horseshoe Bend, on the Trail of Tears, at Sand Creek, Washita, Wounded Knee, and the hundreds of other such incidents. Nor do you stand with them today as the genocide continues among the Dine and Black Mesa, the Shoshone of the Nui Sagojiba, on the Cree of Lubicon Lake, and the Lakota of Pahasapa. I pray, Lord, that you stand with those same Dine, Shoshone, Cree, and Lakota, and all Native people as they continue to fight the unholy doctrine of manifest destiny and the destruction that it brings. Lord, my prayer also goes for those around the world who continue to suffer because of the avarice of the beast. I pray for the Maya of Guatemala, the Zapacita of Mexico, the Palestinian people, and the people of Iraq as they all continue to bleed. I know now that the Indian Wars didn't stop in 1890, but they continue today. Lord, today I lift up in prayer. I am thankful that we survive, and I pray for the strength and courage to continue. I know your love knows no bounds, and that the suffering of the children of Iraq or the elderly dying is as dear to you as anyone else. I pray for the strength you gave our ancestors, a power and faith that has brought us this far, and we remember the words of Jesus. Blessed are those that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. These words have always rang true with us. They were spoken to our hearts long before Atayok Naholo set foot on our land. So, Lord, like the ghost answers of years ago, we have faith that all things will be made right. But we realize that we must have the courage to fight towards that end. So we give you thanks today, Lord, not for the hypocrisy of the white man and his American way, but for the true grace and mercy of the Creator of life. Amen. I came across this Indigenous prayer a couple years ago. I think it's only been out for a few, but I came across it, and it was just a good reminder to me that Thanksgiving, as my family often celebrated it in northern Michigan, just didn't take into account all of the people that were harmed along the way for me to grow up in northern Michigan, for me to live here in Grand Rapids. And so I think creating land acknowledgements when we speak somewhere, acknowledging who the land was taken from and offering thankfulness that we are able to stand upon it today. And in kind of the spirit of Thanksgiving and the spirit of coming together and of offering the Lord thanks, to still be grieved and to still be mindful of the pain and in a lot of ways the slaughter that it's taken for us to be here today. So yeah, with kind of a heavy heart to celebrate Thanksgiving this week, but I wanted to read that in class, and I thought it was still appropriate to read it here today. So thank you for considering that with me. Again, please reach out with any questions. I'm always happy to talk about colonization and manifest destiny, and just kind of deconstructing the colonization story that we heard to honor the Native people that this land was taken from. So anyway, I'll jump into research, but thank you for taking the time to listen to that with me today. All right, so jumping into program evaluation. This is a topic that I love having included in the research methods class because we'll use some of the research methods we've talked about, but for the very specific purpose of evaluating a program. And I think this is a key skill for counselors to have. This is something really practical that we can all do and all engage in the field. So, if at any point you see yourself working in management at a practice or an agency, you'll definitely use the skill. If you will be owning your own private practice, this will be a necessary skill to have, especially as managed care continues and we need to be held accountable by insurance companies and sometimes like external gatekeepers, like people that are invested in the work that we do. So if you have these skills, you're actually going to be much more likely to be hired at several agencies because they'll ask for program evaluation. And this will allow you to apply for and receive grants, make decisions about which programs are funded and which are cut in an agency, optimize programs and staff already in place. So if you'd ever like a break from individual or group counseling, this is a great way to kind of split up the job in social services. So what is program evaluation? It is a systematic collection of information about a program or aspects of a program in order to make decisions about it. So we want to take a program into consideration. So this could be a program like the counseling program at GRTS. We want to systematically collect information about the program in order to make decisions about it. So thinking about what are the goals of the program, what is it doing well, what goals is it not attaining, what evaluation do we need to put in place to see whether or not it's attaining its goals. And this would be true, I'm working on a program evaluation right now for the counseling practice that I work at, kind of asking the question of, what is the role and identity of the counseling practice, since it is a diverse group of individuals. But what are the goals that we're working towards when it comes to mental health outcomes? What are the goals we're working toward as a staff, as growth? What are the goals we're working toward for prevention or engagement in the community? And are we achieving those goals? So many of you, depending on your jobs, if you've ever kind of completed satisfaction surveys or given feedback about your employer, you may have even been involved in a program evaluation through your job. If you've ever joined one of the counseling session, like our counseling program focus groups at GRTS, perhaps you've been a part of it here. And I would say even the idea forms that we'll fill out for class probably this next week. We'll look at evaluating the faculty and whether or not they're meeting the objectives of the program in their teaching methods. And so there's program evaluation kind of taking place all around us, and we just want to continue gaining skills in that area. So a couple other notes here. It involves the assessment of a program at all stages of development and implementation. So program evaluation is something we should engage in from kind of the inception of maybe building a private practice or developing a new program at an agency, so that we'll reach the primary goal of providing quality services to individuals in need. So again, this is focusing not on diagnosing individuals, but diagnosing programs. And then with increased attention on empirically supported treatment, accountability, and reliance on external funding, program evaluation is an ever-increasing component of the counseling profession. And I think this is really true, even just in filling out some paperwork for a client to receive some additional services this past week. I had to go through and note what her anxiety level was when she started counseling, where she's at now, what my goals are for her. And so really considering, there's some clients that I do that really well with, but am I doing that well with all my clients? And if I'm not, how will I evaluate the overall services that I'm providing? So it's actually been really helpful for me to go through this program evaluation process for my own counseling practice. So here's a grant example that would take some fairly advanced program evaluation, but the U.S. Department of Education back in 2012 awarded $15.2 million in elementary and secondary school counseling grants. So anybody who's hoping to work in a school, program evaluation, I would say, is a must there, but also is really, really helpful for obtaining grants like this. So the U.S. Department of Education awarded $15.2 million to 43 school districts across 19 states to establish or expand counseling programs for their students. Grantees will use funds to support counseling programs to target elementary or secondary schools. Specifically, the new awards will aid schools in hiring qualified mental health professionals with the goals of expanding the range, availability, quantity, and quality of counseling services. Parents of participating students will have input in the design and implementation of counseling services supported by these grants. So, school leadership prepared the grant proposal, received about $1/3 each, and put a plan in place to hire some new mental health professionals and provide services. But in order to write this grant proposal, you first have to kind of complete a few steps of program evaluation to evaluate what is happening at your school now, what the goals are, whether or not they're being met, and to show how this grant would assist in meeting those goals. And then as the new people are hired, as the program kind of unfolds, continually evaluating if it's meeting its new goals of serving students and serving families. So it's just very practical to have these program eval skills. So here's another one. It's a grant from FEMA that was awarded to an agency in Colorado. And this one's neat because this FEMA grant funds nearly all of the services this counseling center provides for disaster survivors. And so this, virtually eliminates the need for insurances and co-pays, which kind of streamlines the counseling process when you don't have to go through that paperwork and have a biller and all of that on the front end. However, the only way to receive and maintain these grants was for them to engage in a high quality program evaluation. So the CCP is designed to assist individuals and communities in recovering from the effects of natural and human-caused disasters through the provision of community-based outreach and psychoeducation services. The CCP supports short-term interventions that involve the counseling goals of assisting disaster survivors in understanding their current situation. So supplemental funding for this crisis counseling center is available to state mental health authorities through these two grant mechanisms as well. So the Immediate Services Program, which provides funds for up to 60 days of services immediately following a disaster, and the Regular Service Program, which provides funds for up to 9 months following a disaster. So again, being able to engage in program evaluation, this agency in Colorado was able to receive almost all the funding they needed for, I think it was a 5-year period in order to provide these services. So again, program evaluation is super crucial in being able to have these grants, to apply for them, to obtain them, and then to engage in the process of utilizing them over the course of 1, 2, 3, 5 years. And this is true for GRTS as well. A few years ago, we were awarded a grant from the Lilly Foundation, which I'm trying to remember the specific name, but it's economic challenges facing future ministers. ECFFM. There we go, ECFFM. Sorry. So what this grant allowed is it allowed space for GRTS to hire a part-time individual to do essentially some financial planning, some financial education, working with ministry students on their current levels of educational debt and debt outside of just educational, and really provided a way to enhance some programming that we have for students at GRTS that are going on to ministry positions that may not pay a lot of money. And that's difficult if you leave the institution with, $60,000 or $80,000 worth of debt and have some debt from undergrad. That just doesn't set you up well for, a $25,000 pastoral position in a rural area, which is kind of like the standard. It's a little different in Grand Rapids because there's so many mega churches. There's a bit more funding going around here, but I think it's like the average pastor in the United States makes like $32,000 or $33,000 and works in a rural congregation of less than 100 people. So That was a really neat grant that we were able to obtain through the work of Dr. Tara Cram, our Associate Dean, but had to engage in a lot of program evaluation along the way to get there. So a few key terms that are going to be in pretty much every program evaluation. Stakeholders. So this is going to be any individuals involved in or affected by the program. So parents, family members, principals, teachers, faculty, clients, funding agencies, and I would even dare say sometimes community members here. And this could be, people at insurance companies. Goodness, this could be almost anybody depending on what the program is doing. And so kind of the main question I ask there is, who cares how a program is doing? And if somebody cares how a program is doing, they are likely a stakeholder for the program. Accountability. And this is going to be kind of taking an honest look at how something is running. So providing feedback about the program to its stakeholders. So how much does the program cost? What are the areas of success? What areas need improvement? How long should the program run? What kind of measures, thinking of class last week, do we have to share about how the program is doing? So again, I always just like to make this practical. So maybe thinking about your job or thinking about the counseling program at GRTS, just take a minute and jot down, like, who are the stakeholders? Who are the stakeholders for GRTS? Who cares how a program is doing, how our program is doing? For those of you maybe at practicum sites, Liz, I'm kind of thinking of you right now. Who are the stakeholders? Who cares how that clinic is running, how the clients are doing, aside from just the clients? Who's invested? And then accountability. So thinking about, again, maybe GRTS's program, or where you're at for practicum or internship or for work. What would you want to know about the program, about its success, about its struggles? What would you want to know about how much the program is costing, if it's cost effective, if it's yielding the outcomes that are desired? Especially thinking about GRTS's counseling program, like, are we yielding the outcomes that are desired, especially when it comes to passing the NCE and obtaining counseling jobs after graduation? Those seem like things that, especially students would really want to know. Potential students would want to know. Spouses of students would want to know. So just thinking about those pieces and kind of brainstorming how these key terms would fit into an understanding of a program. And then there's going to be kind of two main types of evaluation, or terms that we use for evaluation. So formative or process evaluation. And this is something we ask kind of during the process of, is the program going as planned? So consider opening a new counseling office or starting a new internship program. What ways would you want to evaluate the process along the way? What questions would you have about how it's unfolding, how it's working, who's being impacted along the way, whether or not it's being implemented the way that we want it to? And then we can kind of make changes and act upon those along the way. And so this would be something like, thinking about even in the research methods class, the process evaluations is kind of like a part of the quizzes. So we're like evaluating learning along the way, how it's going, what knowledge you're obtaining, and then working towards a summative evaluation or an outcome evaluation of the final exam or your final grade. So that summative or outcome eval is going to be tied to outcomes. So does the program achieve its goals? And so this involves assessing the entire program to determine the degree to which those goals and objectives have been met. So oftentimes summative evaluations are used to decide if a program should continue, if we're talking about program evaluation. So if I'm evaluating somebody's internship site or a counseling center, and we find out that only 10% of clients coming in are meeting their goals, and yet this program is costing hundreds of thousands of dollars throughout the year, and it's like, okay, does this program need to continue? And if it does continue, how do we essentially revamp the entire thing? Because that would not be like 10% of people meeting their goals would be highly underachieving for the cost. So that's what a summative or outcome eval is going to show us. So this information I just grabbed from a textbook called Program Evaluations, Methods and Case Studies, because I think it asks some really helpful questions. So what does a program evaluation do for us? It helps us answer some of the following questions. Is a program needed? Who should receive services and for how long? Is a program implemented as planned? Like, when we map out what we're going to do ahead of time, does that actually take place? Are resources being used properly? Are they being used effectively? Are they being used to the best of their ability? So this is a process, especially when I was running the admissions office, we would go through quite frequently. When I look at the big budget that I had to run the admissions office, pay the staff, do the marketing, keep our databases, pay for our applications, retention of all the student files, all of the advertising that we do, the travel that we do, hospitality, inviting students to campus. When you map out how all of the money is being used, are we using the resources as effectively as we could? What are a program's measurable outcomes? What is the program trying to achieve? As again, thinking about admissions, like what is the program trying to achieve? The admissions office is trying to recruit and retain students for programs, and we had specific goals related to number of students in each program every semester. What are the program's costs? So doing that, what are the benefits kind of versus cost benefit analysis there? Which programs produce the most favorable outcomes? So of all of the work a counseling center is doing or a counseling program, what is it doing the best? Where are the strength areas? And then are program benefits maintained over time? So not just, do clients report an immediate positive outcome, but are these sustained? Is it doing good over time? And so oftentimes these types of questions can be answered through focus groups, surveys, interviews, archival data, intake and exit assessments, some of the different measures and assessments you would give clients along the way. So a lot of the things that we've learned so far in relation to collecting qualitative and quantitative data will be implemented in order to construct a program evaluation. So then thinking about kind of setting up a program evaluation, what are some of the major components? And we'll get to steps next. So the major components are a needs assessment. Is a program needed and who will it serve? That's the first thing we have to determine, is a big needs assessment. Process evaluation, so that evaluation along the way, do the current activities, programs, processes match the stated goals? Are we doing along the way what we should be doing in order to hopefully meet the outcome evaluation of how are participants performing compared to a control group? Is there improvement in mental illness? Is there improvement in self-esteem, depression, anxiety? And then an efficiency analysis. So this is where we're doing that cost-benefit analysis where we're comparing the cost of the program in relation to the need, the processes, and the outcome. So are we using the money effectively? How are we distributing it? So again, just take a couple minutes and kind of think of, practicum internship site, think of a place that you've worked, and kind of ask those questions like, Who was this program for? Who was it trying to serve? How were we evaluating who we were serving along the way and whether or not our program was meeting its goals? Were there any types of outcome or summative evaluations where we really compiled a lot of data and determined if our program was working? And then who was looking at kind of that cost benefit analysis? So finally, we get to the steps. So let's say you're going to set up a program evaluation, kind of similar to what I'm doing right now, or thinking about your practicum internship sites, jobs that you've had, even thinking about GRTS. Like GRTS has to maintain accreditation. So we routinely have to gather data to send to the Department of Education, to send to ATS, to send to the Higher Learning Commission. And they often want to know, students' NCE pass rates, job placement, all those pieces. So, step one, identify the program to be evaluated and the stakeholders. So who wants the evaluation? Is it coming internally or externally? What are the resources and the timeline for an evaluation? I have a friend who's a faculty at Regent, and he is hilarious. He does program evaluations kind of on the side. He has a consultation business. And this guy, he charges anywhere between like $50,000 and $100,000 to go in for like a 3 to 6 week program evaluation. It is wild. He's a hoot, and he's just lived into kind of the idea that being a counselor educator should not mean that he's living at the poverty level. No, he wouldn't be anyways. But he just like, he lives into his gifting and just makes ridiculous money. It's astounding. Anyway, who are the key stakeholders? And so besides the individuals that are asking for the evaluation, who else would we be reporting the outcome of an evaluation to? And then what role will these stakeholders play? Will they give us information? Will they be willing to sit down for a focus group? Can we survey them? How involved do they want to be? And then defining the program. So depending on what we're doing a program evaluation of, what are we measuring? So are we measuring client outcomes? Are we measuring the essentially what I would call like therapeutic process? So the relationship between the counselor and the client. Are we measuring, I'm putting together right now a prevention program to address risky sexual behavior on college campuses. And one of the things that we're using for evaluation is how many students sign up for this like elective text system. It's like an opt-in system where, they'll get texts I think it's 2 times throughout the week with kind of some like motivational interviewing questions, some encouragement, some positivity and support. And so how many students opt into that? That's one of the ways we're measuring success. There's also these peer groups that students can join, or peer trainings they can go to, and there will be free male and female condoms at those trainings. And so one of the ways we're measuring success is kind of by how many condoms disappear at each of those trainings to reduce risky sexual behavior. So thinking about, what's being measured, how it's being measured, and what's the program supposed to do? What are the goals? And so for us, why is, how many students opt into this texting system? How many students take condoms? How many students commit to monitoring drinking when engaging in sexual behavior? So thinking about the ways we're measuring that, how does that tie to reducing risky sexual behavior among college students? So what is the program supposed to do? And then determining what success would look like. So once we know what a program is doing, who's involved in the process, and what success would look like, we're going to determine a program evaluation design. And so there's a few different types of designs we can get into, but first we're kind of going to ask, do any evaluation examples exist? Has this been done before? what type of formative evaluation is needed throughout the process, what type of summative evaluation is needed, and then running a larger kind of needs assessment, which we'll talk about in a couple of slides. So we'll determine the type of evaluation we're going to do. We're going to begin gathering evidence. So employing those qualitative and quantitative methods we've discussed in class so far. And then we're going to analyze data. So we might be running t-tests or ANOVA, or looking at some of the qualitative work of pulling together themes. What are clients saying about their experience in counseling? What are the primary themes? And then monitor and evaluate the program's progress over a little bit of time. And then number 6, my exclamation point there, present and use findings. This is one of the things with a program evaluation, just like most research, is it's not just for us, it's not just to engage in and then let go of. We want to present the findings to the people at the program, to the stakeholders, but then we kind of want a commitment that they're going to use those findings. That, you know, if they find out they're only operating at, 50%, and they could do X, Y, and Z to increase their capacity, to increase their effectiveness, that they need to put intake measures in place on the front end and exit assessment measures on the back end so they can continue gathering this data. We want to know that they're going to use it, that that's a key piece of program evaluation. All right, so often one of the main steps of a program evaluation is that needs assessment, and I just wanted to flesh this out a little bit more. So this is a specific example from transforming the school counseling profession. So it looks at, as we're thinking about an evaluation or a needs assessment, one, who's the audience? Who's going to be influenced by the outcomes? So what's the population being assessed? Who's impacted by the program? If we're trying to improve counseling availability for individuals on Medicaid, who would the audience be? So you can have several needs assessments within a program evaluation, or you can kind of have like one comprehensive one, depending on kind of how many parts of a program there are. The behavior, what is the expected attitude or behavior? So what is the program doing? How does it operate? What are the concerns? How do we allocate money? Who's involved? So like, what are all the behaviors taking place? What are the conditions? So thinking about context, or the mode in which a behavior will occur. So what is the context? Is it a school? Is it a counseling center? Is it a community? Where is it taking place? Who has access? What is the setting? And then a description. So thinking about concrete and measurable performance criteria. So what are the goals of the program, and how will we measure them? How will we know the program is meeting its goals? So another way I like to think about this is a really common SWOT analysis. SWOT analyses take place in organizations all the time. This is a needs assessment. So where you're looking at the strengths of an organization. So what is running well, what is working. You're looking at weaknesses, internal lack of competence, of resources, or difficulty performing the objectives or goals of the organization. You're looking for opportunities. So what are any external possibilities that an organization can pursue to gain additional benefits? And then what are the threats an organization is facing? So any external factors that have the potential to reduce an organization's performance. So a SWOT analysis is a common needs assessment, but just thinking about kind of a needs assessment is determining the comprehensive gap between what is and what should be. So what is taking place in a program, in a counseling program, in a counseling clinic, in a health clinic, in a school system? What is taking place and what should be taking place, and what are the gaps? So again, you can do a bunch of small needs assessments, or you can do kind of one big one that show us where all of the gaps are within a program. So just kind of a real quick example. So This is in thinking about higher education counseling program. A faculty member will spend approximately 20 minutes per class session reviewing comprehensive exam information as monitored through class observations by a third-party observer. So for this needs assessment, who's the audience? We have the students in class and we have the outside observer. What is the expected behavior in this, this kind of program, what the faculty member is doing? The expected behavior would be 20 minutes of class review. That's what we're expecting this individual to do. What is the context? Class sessions. So in thinking about, this is only available to students in class. What about when students miss? And that's something we'd want to know about the context is, are these 20-minute class sessions recorded? Is there any way to obtain this information if a student misses class? And then what are the performance descriptions or criteria? So 20 minutes of each class session discussing comprehensive exam info as measured by a timer and an observer. So an observer is maybe filling out a form after each one. And then why are we doing this? Do we expect students to do better on exams? Should that be one of our performance criteria? What is the outcome we're looking for? So I imagine it would be through 20 minutes of comprehensive review every session. We would expect an increase of, X number of points on final exams compared to students that did not have this program in place. So this is just kind of like a super simple, really quick example. So also just fleshing out the efficiency analysis, also sometimes called the cost-benefit analysis, which I've probably said too many times already. So this allows one to decide on the cost versus the benefits of a particular course of action. So a couple examples here. Staying up late, cramming for a final exam can be helpful, but at some point the cost of staying up too late will overshadow the benefit. Does more expensive or elaborate therapy necessarily lead to a better treatment outcome? So even thinking about how much money do we put into what our offices look like, the paint colors on the wall, the furniture that clients sit in, what money is put into evaluation or assessment, what money is put into how clients schedule therapy. Do they have the option of scheduling online, or do they have to call or text or schedule while they're in session? What are all of the places that we put money into, and how does that impact a better treatment outcome? And with this, you're also going to think about, with a cost-benefit analysis, how much are we paying our employees? So, if you're paying a counselor $30,000 a year and expecting them to see 30 clients a week, how quickly are we burning therapists out, and how does that impact those treatment outcomes if therapists on average are only staying 1.5 years or 2 years? I would imagine over time that's really going to impact, how many clients lose their therapist midway through the process. So would increasing pay and decreasing kind of number of sessions, the expectation of the number of sessions, would that yield better therapy outcomes and longer tenure of staff, things like that. So we want goals to kind of find the right balance of the greatest benefit in relation to stewardship of costs. So we don't want to just spend money foolishly, but we want to find the balance there. All right, so this little guy I just wanted to include because I think it's kind of just a quick visual example of a program evaluation kind of model. So kind of step one, identify the problem. This is going to be based on the mission or the goal of the organization. Develop a plan to evaluate it, execute the plan, assess, employ those statistical analysis skills that you have, and then share the results with stakeholders. So this just helps me just kind of get a little visual of like, what are we trying to do with the program evaluation? Enjoy. I hope you guys love it. All right, and then real quick to finish off, just 3 slides on types of evaluations and then the value of like an executive summary at the end. So there's a few different types of evaluations we can engage in. The first kind of being more of a constructive strategy. So this would be adding a new component and assessing added value. So an example, adding a community service project for offenders to examine if victimization decreased more. So there's already a program in place, they're working with offenders, they just want to add one piece and they want to evaluate if this new program, this new aspect of the program is a value add. So that's one way to set up a program evaluation. Second would be more of a parametric strategy. So this would be program evaluation at different stages to kind of determine the best stage or intervals to assess. So how often do we need to be assessing how well a program is doing? Would this be, a cost benefit analysis? Yearly, monthly, weekly? How often does that need to take place in order to monitor and measure effectiveness? So they'll kind of sample that out and then determine the most beneficial time frame to put an evaluation strategy in place. Then we have objects-based evaluation. So this is where I think you see this one quite a bit, but you're looking at determining if goals or objectives are met. So very specifically, here's the 5 goals of this program. Are they met? So, an example, has someone identified the key triggers of anger and developed a healthy response protocol? So in looking at maybe an anger management training, anger management program, did they meet their objectives and goals? Did they figure out what is causing or triggering the anger and develop a healthy response and find outcomes? If so, great. An expert model opinion or expert opinion model. So this is where we use an outside kind of neutral individual who is an expert in the area that we're evaluating. So this happens a lot in like court cases. They bring in experts to kind of give some feedback, but we want somebody who is going to, maybe be an expert on bullying interventions, who's going to come into a school and kind of comprehensively take a look at what we're doing and to determine likely if it should receive extra funding, if the program should go on. So having an expert opinion model for program evaluation. So that's typically going to be where you pay somebody kind of the big bucks to come in and run in a program evaluation. And like my faculty member, maybe that can be you someday. And then the final 2, an improvement focused approach. So this would be where, we maybe know something in our program is not working. Maybe at GRTS, we have low retention in one of our programs, or low retention after a specific class the students take. There's something that's not working, and so ineffective program components are reviewed to figure out what went wrong, what's not working. And the entire program evaluation is going to be focused on building a strategy in order to address what's not working. So you interview a perpetrator after a bullying incident to understand why a program may not be preventing the behavior. So again, just thinking about when we notice something's not working, we need to start gathering data to figure out kind of what went wrong and how we can improve it. And then the success case method, where information is specifically sought kind of on the back end of a program to figure out who benefited most from a program and why. And so this type of evaluation is kind of gathering the data or the stories of what's working so that a program can, kind of put more money in those areas, kind of better serve and implement and engage with the things that are already working. And sometimes, if I'm thinking of like the YWCA downtown, if they start interviewing people that have gone through the programs there and they find out, it's the groups and it's the counseling services And it's the shelter that was like really the value add for individuals. That was the things they benefited most from. Well, maybe having a resource closet on the lower level that they pay a full-time employee to staff and take care of, well, maybe that's not something they're going to put money into anymore, because nobody mentioned that as a part of what made them successful. Or the I'm blanking on the name right now, but it's the program to help individuals start businesses and begin making income for their families. If nobody mentions that program, then maybe when they're evaluating where they put money the next year, they put it towards the things that people are saying kind of benefited them most. So the success case model. And then finally, so once you complete a program evaluation, typically they're going to be anywhere between, I would probably say a full program evaluation is going to be between like 20 and 100 pages, depending on how robust the program is. I know, like when we just sent our program evaluation, essentially it's a program evaluation to CACREP for our self-study. That was like well over 200 pages of content of like what GRTS is doing in its counseling program. So like the one I'm writing right now for my counseling practice, I think it's probably going to end up right around like 12 to 15, but I'm not running the full evaluation. I'm just doing the proposal and then steps for what would be next to engage in the full evaluation. So anywho, because they're so long, you always want to include, there's the word, an executive summary at the front end of it. So this is kind of like an abstract of a journal article, but typically longer. So this might be 2 to 3 pages, and it's going to help program evaluators and key stakeholders have a common understanding of the program eval process. So an executive summary report should contain background information about the needs assessment, information about data sources and data analysis, and recommendations based on the findings of the program evaluation that can be implemented, as well as like future evaluation suggestions. So it's essentially just condensing everything that was done into probably 2 to 3, maybe 2 to 5 short pages, where it's like, here's what we did, here's what we found, and then here's the much longer explanation of it in the official program eval. So again, I hope this was helpful to you. I hope some of it felt practical, like things that potentially you could engage in your specific context. Even thinking about it, with you, if you're someday just an individual practitioner or part of a group practice, how are you assessing what you're doing as a counselor and if it's effective? You'll have clients here and there that tell you stories or give you feedback. You'll see some clients making progress. You'll see other clients that, come for 3 sessions and completely disappear. So how do you know you're doing well? What goals do you have for yourself as a counselor? What are you focusing on as far as, building a relationship or helping clients achieve outcomes? What type of improvement do you want to see? All of those pieces. So kind of mapping that out for yourself and having some, intake and exit assessments that help you gather that information along the way. Maybe, kind of a brief survey that you send out to clients 6 months after treatment to help determine if they still feel like they've reached their goals, or if their depression levels have stayed down, or how they're engaging in coping skills now. So just thinking about ways that you can kind of continually be evaluating your work as a therapist, but then also maybe an organization's work or an agency's work that you're involved in. So, all right, time to put this all together and see how long I talked at you all. I know it's at least shorter than the 3 hours of class, but yes, hopefully you were able to put me on time and a half. And my dogs have done quite well. I did have to stop between slides and go let them out a couple of times, but they have not been barking in the background. I do have Christmas music playing for them in the living room, so hopefully that's not like overlaid in the back of this, but if it is, hopefully it's just, you know, soothing, getting you guys in the mood for more snow and Christmas time. I hope you all have a great week, and next week we will discuss survey research. We'll spend some time with the final chapters of Aging with Grace, and we'll hopefully take at least, you know, 30-40 minutes to do some review for the final exam. So next week will be packed. Make sure you've finished Aging with Grace, and we'll work in groups again and kind of just talk through the ending of that book. Have a good week. Bye, guys.